So I'm going to be talking about what we think is happening in 2024 in the wonderful world of inkjet. What's happening? I'm going to share some numbers, I'm going to share some views of a new report that Smyth has just published looking at the future of inkjet, and I'm going to focus a little bit on packaging and some of the important things that I think are going to be shaping the industry. Talking about run length changes. Everyone knows that the average run length is changing, but what does that actually mean? And we've done some research and talked to a number of brands, a number of converters to find out what we're talking about. We're talking about technology maps. I like technology maps, and I'll show you some new arrivals and more companies getting involved in the space, pushing forward what the technology can do. Talk a little bit about e-commerce and the implications of that. The EU product passport, the digital product passport. If you don't know about that, that's the one thing you really do need to know after I sit down. We're involved in some interesting projects. I'll touch on some of them and why we think they're interesting and why they're going to shape the way that things are going to be happening in the future. And in a few months' time, we're all going to be in Germany, so some thoughts on what's happening in Dusseldorf. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sean Smyth. I act as an independent and a consultant for Smyth. I'm a print techie, and I've been involved in print technology for a long time. How does it make money? How does it shape markets? I write various reports. I also appear at various events. I act as a journalist. I write for people, anybody that wants me to write, and wants to give me money to write, I should say. But I've also owned commercial printing companies, I've owned packaging companies, and get involved. It's how the appropriate technology makes money is what I'm interested in. So we're talking about inkjet. I've got 20 minutes, so I've shut down my number of slides to show what happens. Inkjet can print on everything, not just anything, in different formats. And I'm not going to go into a huge volume of this thing, but what you have to realize is that there's a huge big industry, but it's a combination of niches. And these combination of niches are very interesting because people are moving from one into another. And the technology enables them to do this. And it's really fermenting change. And this is the big thing about inkjet. It's so flexible. It can do so much. It enables people to change their business models, to change the way they see things, and get into new places. And that's why it's growing. And I'm going to share some Smithers data. This is not yet finalized, and as Fraser said, uncertainty, yeah, I can agree with that totally. We normally finalize the previous year's data in April, May of the year, so this is with that thing there. Current and constant values. Normally I present in constant values, but with inflation I'll show you some current values, or square meters. Everyone knows what a square meter is. And I'm splitting the market into publishing. Well, there is some magazines and there are some newspapers. Magazines are growing very quickly, but it's incredibly small. It's all about books, which is a pretty important sector. Graphics, the traditional direct mail, transactional print, display, wide format. And then the industrial sector. So this is beyond print or packaging for profit. Come on, machine. And here we have, in current values, an overall market about $120 billion of final output produced by companies that use inkjet printing to do various things. The blue bit down the bottom is the publishing, nice big jump to the orange, which is the graphics, packaging. The gap between the grey bit at that end and that end is growing because packaging is, labels and packaging are improving ever more. And then you have the industrial, where people are decorating things, ceramics, decor, not the traditional print market. And that's in current values. And the reason I'm here, and the reason we're all here, is that the 2029 bit is higher than the 2018 bit, which, when I normally present at printing conferences, is not always the case. So it's great not to be a harbinger of doom at these events. But in current values, that includes impacts of inflation, it includes impacts of changing currency fluctuations and exchange rates. In constant value terms, well, my headset's working, but my clicker isn't. Oh, there we go. Positive, but not quite as positive, because we've got a significant impact of inflation. And some of the inflationary pressures are for substrates, which are going up and down, and it really are confusing things. But generally going in the right direction still, but not quite as sharply. Whereas the value, the area printed, growing far more sharply. It's going to be cheaper to print a square meter in 2029 than it is in 2024, and it was in 2019. And that trend is, again, driving inkjet. So we think these numbers are pretty positive, and they're going forward. So why is this? Oh, sorry, I should have given you the growth rates as well for things. Positive growth rates. The last 5 years in blue, the next 5 years in orange, in square meters, constant value, current value. So the current values are higher than the constant values because they include inflation. The weird thing is this publishing down the bottom. Now, magazines are growing incredibly quickly in inkjet because there weren't any a few years ago, and there aren't going to be very many in 5 years' time, but it's books. Its book manufacture has really changed because when you integrate inkjet with clever finishing systems, you manufacture books at a lower unit cost than you can do it using litho and offset. And the suppliers are doing that, and they're having a good time in the book market, which is surprisingly growing, because more and more people are fed up with seeing things online. Nice to relax with a book every now and again. But positive numbers all the way through. So packaging and labels we're going to focus on. I was in Japan last year, and I didn't know that there was a daily lip balm for everybody. And the very good news, if you count the February one, is there is a February the 29th independent lip balm. I've no idea if these were printed using inkjet, but if they weren't, then someone's got a pretty low runs of metal tin cans and labels for them. We see labels, corrugated packaging, cartons, flexible starting to come around, rigid plastics and metal. Using inkjet machines and hybrid machines, integrating analog printing with the area. The interesting thing about the technology is how it's changing the function of packaging beyond the traditional functions. It can do more. It's going to have to do more going forward because you can have independent variable data, unique identifiers on each pack, opening up new potential applications for labels, for packaging, for customer interaction, consumer interaction, and insight into consumer behavior, which is very important for brands. They love these types of things. But also for logistic supply chain improvements, particularly as the retail space is changing, more and more e-commerce, having unique identifiers on packs allows them to do more things. And I'll talk a little bit about that, some more of that later on. There's a lot of suppliers involved in developing inkjet machines. This slide will be available. If you're taking a picture of me, I suggest you shouldn't bother doing that, but that you can have. I now regard this almost as, it's like the optician's eye test. When I first did it about 8 years ago, you could actually see, because there weren't many players, and the type size was much bigger. As more and more players come in, I have to reduce my type size to make it fit. And this one does not include electrophotography. It really is quite a fussy slide in there. But you've got solution suppliers, more and more of them. Occasionally you see somebody leave, but they're replaced by another 5 coming in all the time, to use inkjet to print everything that you can possibly think about in the packaging space. Rigids, including glass, metal, and plastics, flexible packaging, cartons, corrugate, all these number of things. And if anybody is missing, please let me know, because that's my fault. Lots and lots of people driving innovation, driving change, creating Schumpeter's sort of chaos of capitalism, and the fact that it's going to eat its young. It's changing. If you don't move and do different things for different people as a supplier, you're going to be in the cold very quickly. And we'll see more people, by the way, in Drupal. It's going to get much more fussy as more people start playing in these areas. I'm pressing buttons and nothing's happening. This is... Where do I point it at? Over there, okay. Oh. So some of the interesting innovations last year at the MetPack, moving into flat sheet metal printing from SACME. There are other ones as well. This is an interesting one at Schumacher, making paper bags using an inkjet system that they link themselves into bag making. If you ask me later on, I'll tell you where they get their ink from. It's at quite an interesting price. A couple of quick ones there. Last year at Hunkler Innovations, the first time I saw a flexible packaging press at Hunkler Innovations. Why? Because lots of people in the commercial space who are using inkjet technology want to move into different businesses, and you're seeing the technology enabling companies to move from their traditional heartland. Could be book printing, could be transactional mail printing. They're thinking about getting into flexible packaging, which seems a bit of a leap to me. This is the thing in front of it is from Winkler and Dunnebeer. They're an envelope manufacturer. They're now using light e-commerce packaging using inkjet printing systems. I stand here. Oh, this is great. I press the button, nothing happens, and then three come all at once. It's like London buses. Comexi was previously involved, a traditional wide format CI press manufacturer in Flexo, moving into inkjet to provide variable data areas, linking it onto as a hybrid machine on there. Chinese, a lot of things happening in China. It's difficult to know exactly how real or otherwise it is, but Smyth has an office in China, and they go and talk to various people. A lot of activity in corrugate in China. And the interesting one here from Wonder is the fact that they're linking the single pass printing, lots of people have, but they're now putting the slotting into it. So they're actually creating inkjet folder gluers, rather than just inkjet printers, which I think is a significant implication. I've got lots of slides, Robert, honestly, and some of them are going to appear in there. BHS, we're going to hear from Niels tomorrow, and he very kindly gave me this slide. You might see it again tomorrow. So as well as the color machine there, they've got a mono device, because they see huge growth in the low graphics facilities. This is a device from Sealed Air, looking at auto-printing bags in a very low-end e-commerce warehouse. And they can print the bags on demand as they're moving through. And you'll see a lot more people using technology outside the traditional converters space at point of use. This one is PCMC in the States. This is a device that they have that they built for lottery ticket manufacture, in line with a group of flexo presses. And this is now, they've got the first one of these in the flexible packaging market. and they're going wider and wider on that. New functions of packaging. I talked about how it's changing. We're seeing advertising on boxes. Amazon playing with it, some other people doing it. Interesting because if they can make it work, all of a sudden they can be playful, they can do various other things to it, but it enables them to change their concept of packaging from a cost into a potential revenue generator. And I don't know if many of you are familiar with the Paw Patrol. I have grandchildren, so I'm very familiar with Paw Patrol. And using that on boxes is changing and becoming a more effective advertising channel than the traditional ones. There's Super Mario Brothers, the movie, doing it in India now. It's not just in North America, it's not just in Australia, it's moving everywhere as companies start to see how they're doing, or particularly the Amazon advertising sector starts to change. Last September, Label Expo. Anything hugely interesting? Nothing earth-shattering? Well, awful lot of Asian, new suppliers from Asia present. If you look at the landscape of Drupa, there's going to be an awful lot of companies that I've never heard of previously there. I pride myself that I know what's going on with this industry. Very surprised to see this blue box as an 850 millimeter wide flexible inkjet flexible packaging press. Didn't know it existed. They launched it at Label Expo. Kolarobia, moving from ceramics into packaging and labels at Label Expo, doing that. Lots of incremental performance. More flexible packaging, more cartons and corrugated from the label sector. Well, when I tell people in commercial print this is happening, they tend to be a bit concerned about that. Oh, that was good. I don't think that machine that I hastened to is going to change the label sector. It is actually doing it. I'm about to finish, but I'll just say something about the run length market. Now, Andy Cook, who some of you may know, used to be at FFEI, spent a lot of time talking to brands about run length changes across there. And he came up with this solution, so that basically up to 5,000 square meters of output, there's going to be a lot more of that in 5 years than there was before. Predicted shift, he put from 22.3 to 24.8% of packaging and label work under 5,000 square meters. We all know about that, and we all hear about it, and it's instinctively, it's probably right. But what that means is in North America and Europe, if these numbers are true, and who am I to say that they're not going to be, that's 15 million more jobs in 2027 than in 2022. That's what shorter runs mean. 15, 25, 40 million additional jobs. How do you do this in a traditional analog plant? And the answer is, you don't. Because they just can't handle that one. Starting to happen in cans with short runs and moving into inkjet. Short run for tin cans in the States, it's 5 trucks. That's 1,030,000 cans is the minimum order quantity that Ball will produce for you in North America. What are they doing about it? Well, if this worked, they're launching digitally printed cans. And they've got a system from Slack International, Chinese supplier, producing digital cans in Brazil, going to roll it out into the rest of the world. Velox, partnering with Crown, and have sold, they tell me, 15 of their systems moving into can-making lines, but also the can producers and fillers going forward. Hinterkopf moving into short-run can production. Ardagh, who is another one of the large suppliers. They bought Hart Packaging in Canada because they had digital capability. They bought NOMOQ, no minimum order quantity, a Swiss startup to move through. So these things are happening. More legislation coming along to reduce the amount of recycling, to get sector-specific labeling. And that's the key one. Forget about all this nonsense about reducing waste and increasing recirculation. You're going to have to do that by having more information on the pack. That's unique numbering. The digital product passport in Europe is being published this year. It's going to basically put a unique identifier onto a product that will allow customers and end consumers to see if it's easy to get it fixed, to find out where the packaging is going to go, to recycle it, and to reuse areas. Go and have a look at it. There's an awful lot of stuff about what the format of the data is going to be. I don't really care what the format of the data is. You're going to have a digital twin. It's a blockchain application. It's going to be rolled out very quickly on batteries and vehicles in there. That's important. It will be inkjet driver for it. My last slide is, well, why is this so good? And Smithers did some work with a bunch of converters and end consumers, asking them, why are you interested in digital? Why do you want to do it? And it's shorter runs, more market segmentation, lower minimum runs. The point I would make on this slide is there is not the same view from end users as there is for converters. End users think that lower environmental impact is far more important than the converters think. There is a disconnect between the two. And you need to really go and listen and talk and see what your customers will value. And as people sort of talk about this publicly, honestly, they do. Oh, why do we want to do it? Why did SIG spend a lot of money buying a digital press? They did it because they wanted to react to changing market dynamics. More frequent changes of packaging designs. Unleash the power, customization of packaging through Tetra Pak. More new business opportunities. Digital print enables these brands to grow and these brands' customers to grow. And that's why inkjet printing is becoming more and more important. Doing new things, putting new capabilities onto packaging that was previously in direct mail. Now they're saying it. Droop around the corner, what are we going to see? Well, I'm signed to various NDAs. You're going to see upgrades, you're going to see incremental improvements, some blue sky offerings. You'll see a few significant new entrants into the inkjet sector in different applications who aren't there now. You'll see automation. You'll really see an awful lot of automation. You'll see workflow. You'll see integrated manufacture. That's why books have gone digital, not because digital is better as a printing method than alternative printing methods. It's because manufacture of books is better. You'll see that in labels. You'll see that in packaging. You'll see it beyond those in a lot of the commercial print sectors. So, still a lot happening in 2022. My technology map's growing. There's lots of things I see. Inkjet's expanding into many, many more applications. If you're an end user or a converter, don't focus on what it can't do. Focus on what it can do. And look at the business benefits. It's changing the routes to market. It's changing the business model of producers. New players are coming in. Brands are going to do it themselves because it's straightforward. It's not going to be necessarily the converters that do that. Nick their experiences, steal their experiences. And as my numbers sort of going up, it's an exciting opportunity across the supply chain. And that's me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.